to prevent stress from affecting your body and impacting your life negatively. So that's what we'll be looking at today. And I'd like to start with a Bible text. Ecclesiastes 7:16. I'm using the New Living Translation. So it says, so don't be too good or too wise. Why destroy yourself? There's a reason I've chosen that specific text. And I will be elaborating as we go through the program today. But before we begin, I'd just like to say this. Now, there may be some of you who feel like you don't get stressed at all, so you don't see how this is relevant to you. I don't know if there's anybody who doesn't get stressed. But there are some people who they're so calm, they're so cool, they're so collected, like myself, that we feel we don't get stressed. And that's what I thought until one day I realized my teeth was cracking from stress. So I had one of my lower teeth. This is not a picture of my teeth. I think this is a white man's teeth, so it's not my teeth, yeah. So I had my lower teeth cracked slightly. And that was because I was thinking I wasn't stressed. I was thinking I wasn't stressed. I was doing exams, preparing for exams. One day I just looked in the mirror as I was brushing my teeth, and I just saw this crack there. So apparently I had been grinding my teeth and clenching my teeth from the stress, not realizing it. And so why am I saying this? If you think you are not someone who gets stressed, you're someone who's calm and collected, you're someone who's emotionally strong, be careful that you might be going through stress and not knowing it. And that's even more of a dangerous experience, having a negative impact of stress without even realizing it because you think you are not someone who gets stressed. Because some of you may know some of the impacts of stress, anger, irritability. I put in psychotic symptoms in here because I don't know if you've ever heard of schizoaffective disorder, where you've been going through stress and pressure, and all of a sudden the brain gives way and you start to have psychotic symptoms. Not that you are psychotic, but you have psychotic symptoms, which then resolves itself the less stressed you become. So there's physical health problems. And often when I work with clients who experience chronic fatigue syndrome, ME, I often know then that there is a stress-related problem going on in their life. Things like stroke, heart problems. And if you find that you can't eat or keep your food down, especially when you're under pressure, or you have an ongoing background anxiety kind of going on, it's not never really full blown, but it's just kind of going on in the background. So these are some of the impacts that we can have as a result of stress. And honestly, if care is not taken, things can just go worse and worse and worse. And so one of the reasons we're doing this tonight is to shed light on patterns of behavior, patterns of reactions, patterns of coping that might be likely trapping you in a stress-related problem without you knowing, so that you can avoid all of that and it doesn't have to impact your life. Now, as some of you are hearing me, maybe one of the questions you're having in mind is, but I know what I need to do, and I've tried so hard to do those things. Maybe I know I need to be exercising, I know I need to be resting, but I just can't do these things consistently. I want to kind of hint on a false belief that we tend to have around this. Because you see, the false belief is that we often think that the stress is as a result of problems or bad things in our lives that's causing us to have the stress. And we think then that if I can remove that bad thing from my life, then I will not have any stress problems. Then we go ahead and try to remove that bad thing, and then you find it seems like that bad thing keeps persisting or just getting worse. Or then you find that even if you feel like you're succeeding somehow, but there's a lot of negative consequences of stress you're experiencing, maybe hypertension, high blood pressure, whatever it is. So there's this pattern going on. Why is this pattern going on? This next image is going to kind of highlight it for us. So this is a system, a take-back control system. This is a system that we've been pioneering for a while now, helping people to learn how to take back control of their circumstances, especially when there's emotional health problems in there. Now, as you look at this image, what you see is this lady. She's trying to achieve things in her life. She's trying to become a better mother. She's trying to become a better I was going to say she's trying to become a better father, but just so that some of the men among you know, okay, this could be a man as well. So he's trying to become a better father. He's trying to become a better teacher, trying to become a better first elder in the church, trying to become a better pastor. But as he's pushing towards his goal or her goal, she's noticing that it is like there's certain things that just keep holding her back. And sometimes she's thinking, maybe what's holding me back is my finances. I know there's nothing I can do about that because I can only use the money I have. But often the big problem is, for all of us, there's a set of hidden pressures that we are undergoing. And you can see in this picture, this hidden pressure is the big boulder, and in a way so massive that it's bigger than her. And I'd like to ask a quick question, and if people can just answer quickly because of our short time. What do you think that hidden pressure is?
It could be finance.
It could be finance. One more taker and then we'll move on. One more suggestion and we'll move on.
Sometimes it could be unrealistic expectations.
Unrealistic expectation. Okay. So these are quite good, and they can actually add to that hidden pressure. But to kind of highlight on what that hidden pressure is. So here's the truth. There is a good or positive thing in your life that is causing your stress. And this I sound completely wrong, but as we go through this workshop today, it's going to make total sense. There's a good, positive thing in your life that's causing stress. If you can reduce reliance on that, or you can rely less on that good thing, then you will notice that your toxic stress starts to reduce as well. It makes no sense because it goes counterintuitive to what we will usually think. And this is often why people get stuck with emotional problems, because they would never ever expect that something good, something positive could be feeding stress problems in my life. Now, you may be thinking, but I can't see how this is relevant to me. I don't think there's anything good in my life that could be leading to my pressure. So I'm going to go through 5 examples quickly. And these 5 examples are examples from some of the points people have raised in the survey. I've tried to kind of cater to that. So the first example here is someone thinking that I want to stop taking on more than I can cope with. This is her desire. And she finds that no matter how much I try my hardest to say no when people give me things to do, but I just can't do it. Is it that I can't do it, or I don't have the heart to turn them down, or I just feel like I have the capacity to do it when they ask, so I take it on. And I find myself in that cycle where I'm just kind of struggling. Now, for this person, what will you say could be what's keeping her inability to say no alive? Just one person? Can something else be keeping? Go on.
People pleaser. She wants to please everyone. She wants to make everyone happy.
She wants to make everyone happy. Okay. Very true. So someone who wants to make everyone happy. So really, what's making this person's problem bigger is because she's relying on this idea of being kind. And as a Christian, sometimes Christians, we are taught to be kind, or taught to be caring and loving. So it might be this person, they want to be a nice person, they want to be a friendly person, they want to be approachable, or they want to treat people well. And in their mind, it feels like, if I dare move away from this kindness, niceness, then I'm doing something wrong. So how do we start to reduce the stress we're trying to say no? People might say to the person who's not struggling with this particular problem will say, come on, just say no. Why not, can I just say no? But often, if you're struggling with this, it's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as that. So two points, which I will just quickly elaborate, and then move to the next example quickly. So you work on changing your beliefs around kindness and niceness first, and then you start to reduce this reliance on kindness, but in baby steps. And there's a reason I say baby steps, which I will elaborate a bit now. Now, what I mean by changing your beliefs, right? So is there a long way between being a nice person and a wicked person? Now, it's a person who struggles with this idea of not being able to say no. There's a sense in the mind that if I veer away from being nice just a little bit, I've become almost wicked. Logically, you know that doesn't make sense, but on an emotional level, that's how it feels. And feeling like that can now make it harder to say no. So another thing that would be good to start to change, and it's good as a Christian because we rely on the Bible. But the Bible says, love your neighbor more than yourself. Did anybody catch that? The Bible says, love your neighbor more than yourself. Is that true?
No.
It's not true. What does the Bible say?
Love your neighbor as yourself.
As you love yourself.
Love your neighbor as yourself. So in a way here, the Bible is actually saying you should love yourself as well, as much as you're loving your neighbor. So if you start to love your neighbor more than yourself, you are actually breaking God's law. So it's good to start to change that belief, because somebody who struggles with saying no is often thinking that if I say no, if I don't sacrifice myself to people, I am not loving them. I am not obeying God's law of kindness and generosity, being a self-sacrificial Christian. But when you do that, you're actually breaking God's law. Because God is expecting that, yes, you love your neighbor as yourself. In other words, you apply the same amount of love to yourself as you're applying to your neighbor. Does that make sense? One more point, and then we'll move on to the next one. So, now, what do you think? There was this survey that was done. I read it in a book written by Dr. Robert Murrah. And in this survey, they surveyed a number of children across their lifespan. And they looked at what was happening to them as children, and then they looked at how they turned out as adults. Now, which of these groups of children do you think turned out better? Right. Or should I say it this way? Which of these groups of children do you think had to hear more no's when they were children? Children that were living in healthy, successful families, or children that were in a struggling family? Which one do you think heard more no's?
Well, I'm inclined to say it's children in a struggling family, but I believe that you're going to say it's a healthy, successful family. But I think if that's the case, it's probably because there's, because of the caring in the family. It's like, it's what's best for you. So I'm telling you no, because that's what's best for you.
Okay. Yeah. Yes, it's true. Yeah, and you're right. I was going to say this. In fact, the statistics have shocked me. Children in successful families had an average of 100 no's per day, compared to children in struggling families that were hearing an average of 3 to 5 no's per day. And they found that the core reason was the children in a struggling family, the parents often felt so guilty for where not being able to give the children all the things that they feel the children should have. And as a result, they struggle to say no and struggle to and just let children have their way. Whereas the successful family, they said no so much. And then when they looked at the children's, the outcomes of the children's life, the ones in the successful family who had this 100 notes per day, they succeeded more. And one of the reasons they succeeded more, because they've heard enough no's in their life, whenever they hit difficulties, or they hit people telling them no, or things just don't work out, they are already resilient to it, because they've heard it so much that a no doesn't deter them anymore. Whereas the children who were in struggling family, they struggled because when life doesn't go the way you want it to go, then they hit depression. When things doesn't happen the way, then they start to struggle. So the point here then is, if you are someone who's struggling to say no, when you start reminding yourself that just being 10% not nice is not the same thing as being 100% wicked, like Hitler. And that actually you're obeying God's commandments the more you're saying no. And that people who hear more no, when they grow up, they actually do better. So in other words, you are doing people a benefit. You are doing people a favor when you say no when you need to. Now, I'm not saying that you have to say no every single time now, right? Because then you'll be going the opposite way and actually become like Hitler. But what we're trying to say here is beginning to say no in a balanced way and start to see in your mind that this is a healthy thing. When the belief comes in your mind, it becomes easier to start to try and practice saying no. And so once you have that belief, then the next thing is to start to tiptoe around your brain's fear centers. And what did I say by that? You see, whenever there's something we're struggling to do, our brain has this tendency of trying to make us think, make us fear doing it. And in order to do it, we have to do it in baby steps. So perhaps you practice saying no with someone who you trust that will not get angry with you. First of all, you know that person will not get angry. You say one no per week to start off with, and then start to add it to 2 and increase it until you can say no more often. The mistake people would make would be to try to say, just saying no all the time now, because you get overwhelmed. The stress, the fear, everything will become overwhelmed. So that's the first example of how we pinpoint the positive thing and we start to change by toning down reliance on that positive thing first. So second example, I want to stop constantly thinking about my problems. The problems could be that you are ruminating. You're someone who's just thinking of things that have happened to you already, or you're somebody who's worrying about something that might happen to you again in future. Perhaps you've had so many bad things happen in your life, and you're just trying to stop them from keeping on happening in your life. And so you're working hard on this. And so you're not thinking, but I've tried my hardest to put my problems aside. It's just not working. So I guess the question then here is, can something else be keeping this person's inability to stop thinking about the problems alive? What do you think? Just one person, quickly, so we don't lose time. Salvador, did you want to answer? Any takers? Okay, no takers? Okay, I'll move on then. Okay. Did I see Chesley want to answer quickly, does that? Okay, I'll move on. Right. So, healthy problem analysis and healthy problem solving. Now, I put healthy purposely behind that because when you start the process of trying to problem solve or analyze your problems, you don't necessarily start in a negative place or you don't start in a dysfunctional way. You are trying to resolve your problems because who wants to have problems that keep repeating? Nobody wants to. So you spend time trying to think of the problems, trying to think of how they happened and how you're thinking of how you can now resolve them or prevent them from happening again. And unfortunately, the more you do that, that starts to develop into a habit, and the brain takes over and automates this thinking process, and this starts to create the problem. So how do we reduce this? How do you reduce this not thinking too much? So the first step will be working on changing your beliefs around about problem analysis and problem solving, and then reduce thinking about problems in baby steps again. Now, let's elaborate on that. We all know how a dam works. So with the dam holds a lot of water, and then it opens and the water gushes out. So in a way, we have to sort of mimic a dam when we are trying to do this. So the idea here is, if you are someone who's struggling with a lot of problems, you can't stop yourself from thinking of problems constantly, you're worrying constantly, you're ruminating constantly. You want to start training yourself to notice that you're thinking, notice that you're thinking too much, and then trying to just distract yourself for that period and do something else. Now, what then will happen is the thoughts will come back again. So it's like a yo-yo process. The thoughts will just keep yo-yoing back. You stop it, you try to kind of do something, you start keep yo-yoing back. Now, a lot of people then give up trying to do anything else because they're thinking, what's the point? Because this thought's going to keep coming back. But that's the mistake. Because you see, the way your brain works is by repetition. Anything you do over and over again, it gets better at doing it. So really, the thought coming back is actually a blessing. It's a blessing because it's giving you time, opportunity to repeat practicing, distracting yourself again. It comes back, you repeat practice distracting yourself, and it is over and over and over. And I tell you what's going to happen then is your brain will take over and start to automate the process of distracting you from the thoughts. But that's if you've done enough practicing of distracting yourself from it, distracting yourself, and not beating yourself up for having the thoughts come back again. So instead of trying to stop thinking about problems, schedule a problem-solving time. So put a problem-solving time, maybe sometime in the evening, or maybe you say an hour in the evening, so that the problem is not just left unhandled, undealt with, because a problem that is not dealt with will become a problem that will deal with you. If you don't deal with the problems, will deal with you. So you still have to deal with the problem, but you reduce the amount of time you spend dealing with problems consciously. So you give it a time of the day, every day, so that any other time you find yourself thinking about it, you just postpone it to your thinking time. Then you practice catching and postponing in. No matter how much yo-yoing you have to do, thinking in your mind that actually this yo-yoing is a blessing. God is giving me a chance to practice this so that I can train my brain muscle to stop this thinking too much of negative things. So it becomes habitual. So, moving to example 4. I know if anybody has any questions, I think the questions are left for Friday. I don't know if that's correct. So please just write your questions down and we'll talk about it. Or if anybody wants to kind of talk to me later as well, they can do that. So example 4. I want to stop going into panic mode when asked to do what I know I can do. So I'm going to give you a task. You know you can do it, but you just find yourself just panicking and worrying over it. But you know you can do it, so it gets frustrating that you are panicking when you know you can do it. And what happens then is the panic then interferes with your ability to perform, and then you don't perform very well. So here comes the question. But I've tried my hardest to show myself that I'm capable. It's just not working. It's like it's not sinking. It's not staying in. Then question. So what do you think? Can something else be keeping the feeling of inadequacy alive here? Is it just that the person is just unable to prove to themselves that they can do, that they're capable? What else could that be that's keeping the person's inadequacy alive? Before anybody answers, you can see there's a pattern going on here. How it's a good thing that's actually keeping the problem alive. Our focus tends to be, we focus on the bad thing that we're thinking is the problem, and we're working hard on the bad thing. But the good thing that is keeping the problem alive is not being dealt with. And that good thing still keeps going on and creating havoc. So what good thing could be keeping this feeling of inadequacy alive? What do you think? Any takers? If I move on. Princess, are you saying something without the mic on?
I'm saying maybe it's negativity.
Okay. You know, I said positive thing. Negativity is not positive thing.
Oh, positive. Oh, yeah. Positive. Sorry.
The positive thing could be keeping the problem alive.
that you can do it. Maybe that you can do it.
So the belief that you can do it could be keeping the problem alive.
Yeah.
Yes. So you may be trying to convince yourself you can do it, and that could be keeping the problem alive. Okay, yep, right. Now this is what I found to keep that kind of problem alive, and that is prep work and reassurance. What I mean by prep work, you're preparing for whatever it is. Let's say it's a presentation, you're preparing for the presentation. In fact, which is ironic, the preparation is necessary to be able to do the presentation, but because you think you're not good enough at doing it, you rely heavily on that preparation. Maybe you prepare so hard. Maybe instead of preparing for an hour or two, you prepare for 3 days, preparing for this. And then you go for that thing and you do well, and perhaps you do well at it. But guess what? Because you've prepared so hard, your belief is that the only reason you did well is because you prepared hard, not because you are good at what you are trying to do. So in a way, the preparation or even the reassurance seeking, maybe you're asking for people for reassurance all the time. That do they think that you're good at this thing? Do they think you're good at this thing? Do they think you're thinking this? But what's happening is you're living up their reassurance, and that's not allowing you to feel competent. That's not allowing you to feel confident. So this then eats off away the confidence and keeps the cycle alive. So how to reduce the stress with feeling inadequate? So first of all, is again, work on changing your beliefs around prep work and reassurance. And then reduce preparing. Maybe that was prepare less. Maybe do it in baby steps as well. Don't do it too fast so that you don't overwhelm yourself with just too much fear. And then review your outcomes. Now, I had a client who was... Okay, can you just check with me? We're supposed to be finishing at 8, yeah?
No, 8:30.
8:30.
Or 8:25.
So
yeah.
I've got the floor till what time? Because I see I'm rushing through because I thought I had just 30 minutes.
No, you can finish around 8:25, so we can close off
So I'll
at
try and see if I
8:50.
can aim for 8:15 then. Okay. So I had this client who was a lecturer. Was teaching theater arts, and he was feeling very, very lacking in confidence. And he did exactly what I was saying to you, that he prepared. He prepares so well, and he gets very good commendations at school from his bosses, but never feels able to feel confident. So what I said to him was, okay, let's try this out. When you're sending emails, what do you usually do? I send an email out and I read this email about 5 times before I can feel confident to send it out, to check for mistakes. Okay, let's reduce that to just check for 4 times. Then let's reduce that to, after a few days, reduce it to check for 3 times, check for 2 times, right? And then when it got to check for 1 time, I said, okay, let's now start to introduce mistakes into your emails. Where leave a T out in one word here or there, leave a D out in one word here or there. So as I started to do this, guess what started to happen? Because in his own mind, he was expecting, in a way, although logically he knew that the whole world was not going to fall apart, but in a way he felt that the whole world was going to fall apart because people are going to see all his errors, people are going to start talking about him, maybe the information will get to the manager, to the head of the school, and perhaps they will start putting him on performance, all these negative things that he was expecting. But because he'd never tested them out, the beliefs in them had gotten so strong, heavy, and killing. So as he tested them out, actually reducing doing these things, in other words, putting himself in a situation where he was sort of failing in a way, and notice nothing happened, nothing changed. Then we started working on preparation, prepare less, and see what happens. In fact, the less he prepared, the more he could be himself in the class. And the more he could be himself, the more he actually enjoyed the class experience, the university experience with the students. So, and by doing this, his self-confidence and his sense of competency and belief in himself and his ability started to improve and get stronger. So, instead of berating yourself for stressing out when there's no need to, be compassionate with yourself about this. recognize, okay, there's a system here at play that you need to start working against, and practice less reliance on prep work. Welcome failure as a crucial teacher, and do this until it becomes habitual, and then you notice the stress starts to reduce. Okay, so one more example. This is going to be the final example before we kind of round up. Right, so this one, the person says, I want to recognize and fix my stress triggers before things get worse. So this is for as a person who they notice they've come to realize that they're suffering from the repercussions of stress. So maybe they're now having fibromyalgia or having other conditions, but they don't know how to recognize that the stress is getting worse and how to stop the stress from getting worse, or how to know or what to even look at. Right. So here comes the question again. But I've tried my hardest to recognize and prevent myself from getting stressed. It's just not working. Now, and like with other ones, I'm going to ask you the question. Can something else be making it hard to recognize that you are stressed? What do you think this could be? Any takers? I'm going to wait for someone to answer this one because I know I have time. Any takers? Anybody else to speak apart from Chairs and Princess? If anybody else can speak.
Could it be there could be something in the environment? If there's a lecturer, perhaps you feel threatened. There's somebody in the congregation or in the audience who know much more than you do.
Sister Elsie, I didn't see you there. Hello, it's good to hear you. To hear your voice.
How you going?
Yes. It's good to see you too.
Right.
It's a long time. Yes, sort of. That could be definitely. Okay, well, thanks for answering. So here's the positive thing. Again, you can see there's a pattern going on here. People relying on positive things. And I'll tell you over and over again, over my last 23 years of practicing in mental health, the pattern continues. One of the reasons why people get stuck in the mental health problems is because they don't see that there are good things they are relying on. CBT, in CBT we call it maintenance behaviors. They don't see that good things they are relying on that's actually keeping the stress loops alive in their life. So once you start to pinpoint those good things, and start noticing them, start relying less on them, you'll notice then that the stress, and it happens automatically for every single person I've worked with, they reduce that reliance on those things, they notice that stress levels reduce as well, and they find themselves coping much more. So what's the positive thing here? This one is rather strange, and that is because you are tolerant to stress. You are stress tolerant. That's kind of weird. Or you're a kind of chilled out person but tolerant to stress. What do I mean tolerant to stress? You know, ever heard of people saying they're tolerant to alcohol? Which means that they can drink loads of alcohol before it starts making them feel drunk. Well, I tell you though, many people who are tolerant to alcohol, they suffer alcohol poisoning a lot faster because they are tolerant. Because they've been tolerant and drinking more, which means their body suffers stress from the alcohol intake more than the person who is not. Okay. This is not to say I know anything about it because I don't drink, so nobody should ask why how does he know about this? Okay, but stress tolerant. So this person, they somehow in their life they can actually walk through and push through a lot of troubles and not realize that they're actually starting to get stressed. So how do we reduce this one? How do we reduce... sorry, that was supposed to be dealing with this inability to recognize your stress triggers. So first thing again is working on changing your beliefs around recognizing stress and relying heavily on neuroplasticity. I know in NFood I've talked a lot about neuroplasticity. I don't know if people can still remember. But that's the part where your brain, anything you do over and over again, your brain takes that thing and turns into a habit. An automated behavior. So rely heavily on neuroplasticity. But to kind of elaborate on this, I want to look at this. I call this the stress leprosy experience. You know what happens with lepers, people who have suffered leprosy? Because they lose the feelings on their digits or the nerve endings, they can put their hand in fire and not realize they're being burnt, and it's burning their hand off. So it's something similar is happening with stress here for people. Something about you makes it hard for you to know that actually your stress levels are high up. And so there's a question: if I cannot feel that I'm being burnt, then how do I actually know when I'm being burnt? I need something to be able to highlight to me that I'm being burnt. Otherwise, I would kind of get into a danger zone with being burnt. And so, with people who are struggling with this, I want to kind of come back to our take back control system that we had earlier on. Actually, before I go back to that, I don't know, have you ever heard of, they call them biofeedback mechanisms? I know when we were in Enfield a long time ago, we used to bring stress cards with blue.
Yes, I remember.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. So those are like biofeedback mechanisms. And the idea here is, it's important, if you struggle with this particular stress issue, it's important to train yourself by using something like a biofeedback mechanism, so that you can know when the stress is increasing or not. So for those who may not know what that is, so this is something that you can put your hand on, you can put your fingers on, that would change somehow to highlight when you're getting more stressed, so that you can now associate whatever you do that creates more stress. So in this case, you will notice that okay, maybe when I play too much games on the computer, eventually my stress level goes high, because this thing is showing that my stress level is high. And maybe the reason it's going high is because as you're playing too much game, you're realizing there's so many things in the house that needs to be done that you're not doing, and you're getting stressed up about that. So you use the biofeedback mechanisms to let you know, when does my stress go up and when does my stress go down. Now, once you know that, the idea would then be to start practicing reducing doing those things that cause your stress to go up, and doing more of those things that cause your stress to go down in a balanced way again. Now, that will take a lot of time. It will take a while before you can pinpoint everything that's causing your stress to go up and go down. Now, a faster route, as a shortcut, if you were to go on our website, stresstherapist.net, and look for an article called 36 Crazy Good Things That Crank Up Anxiety and Depression. Actually, if you go to Google and type that into Google, 36 positive things that 36 positive habits that create anxiety and depression, it will be one of the first links in Google. So if you go there, you will notice, you see 36 different positive things that you could be doing that could be adding pressure and stress to you. So I would suggest looking at those up and actually starting to reduce doing those things, and you'll notice there's a kind of correlation in reducing stress in your experience as you go on. And for those who may be interested, we run an assessment to pinpoint all the different positive things that may be going on, that you may be relying on, that you don't really know, to help you pinpoint what those are, so that you can turn things around. Okay. So what I'm hoping that I've done today, what I've tried to do is to show you how these hidden pressures are positive things we are doing to try to cope with our world. There are positive things we are doing to try to cope with the pressures in our lives, but they're working against us because they've gone to extremes. And what I've highlighted today, if we go back to Ecclesiastes 7:16, where it says, "So don't be too good or too wise. Why destroy yourself? The Bible actually says this because we think that something, being good or being positive, being good is a good thing, or being wise is a good thing. But the Bible is actually highlighting how something can be too much, can actually be taken to an extreme. That even if it's a good, positive thing, if it's a good thing, can be taken to an extreme, and it will destroy you. It will destroy us. And so today we've looked at 5 examples of this. We've looked at how kindness actually, or being nice to other people, can lock you in a cycle of not being able to say no. We've looked at how healthy problem analysis, just like Princess's friend, healthy problem analysis and problem solving can lock you in a cycle where you automatically just problem solve all the time. You can't stop doing that. We've looked at how over preparing for work, for presentations or whatever, or reassurance seeking can actually lock you in a cycle where you feel inadequate with yourself all the time. And we've actually even looked at how being tolerant to stress can work out a problem on the long run, because the fact that you're tolerant to stress doesn't mean that if you have too much stress hormones in your system, it's not soon going to have a negative impact on you. So we've looked at all of these things today. Oops. And so we'd like to kind of encourage you as you're just kind of going through life. The way to help, the way to enable us, let's go back to that title, the title of the presentation. The way to prevent stress from affecting our body, the way to prevent stress from impacting our life negatively, is to start seeing the need to balance these things out. Are you the husband who your main way of dealing with things at home is that you want to be the boss all the time? It may be positive because it's positive for you, but what's the impact of that on everybody else in the home? Eventually, the negativity of it is going to affect you. The more you are doing that, everybody's becoming stressed. That will kind of swing back around at you. Are you someone who's hardworking? Right? It's good to be hardworking, but do that too much, it's going to have a negative impact on you. So it's about starting to learn to balance everything out. And the more we balance everything out, the less we will be stressed, and the more confident we will be at being able to live our lives stress-free.